Hi there. Welcome to Finding Your Inner Mr. Rogers. I'm Todd Faber, and I believe that in a world of noise and speed, the most radical thing we can be is kind. We often think of leadership as being in charge, but Fred Rogers taught us that true leadership is being in service to the dignity of others. Today, we're joined by Carolyn Jones. In a city like Boston, the Boston Business Journal isn't just a newspaper, it's the town square for the business community. Carolyn is the one who facilitates which stories get told and who gets celebrated. In the spirit of Fred Rogers, who understood the immense power of the media to shape our world, she leads with the philosophy that business isn't just about the bottom line. It's about the people and the relationships that drive the city forward. As the market president and publisher of the BBJ, she serves as one of the most influential voices in the New England business landscape. She spent her career transforming the way we consume local business news, moving beyond the balance sheet to highlight the importance of leadership, equity, and community impact. She leads with a Rogers-esque commitment to integrity and connection, ensuring that the BBJ isn't just a record of transactions, but a reflection of the vibrant, diverse neighborhood that is the Boston business community. She is truly a truth teller who believes that when we share our stories and celebrate our neighbors' successes, we all rise together. Welcome to the neighborhood, Carolyn.
Thank you, Todd. So much fun. I'm looking forward to this. I will give you one little correction in my intro, which is so kind and I appreciate it. So I really work with my newsroom. They are really the ones who decide what we run and how we run it. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's
Understood.
more about the overarching mission. I want to make sure folks understand that and give credit where it's due.
No, and I'm sure that your folks appreciate that, but we see you as that conductor for all of that, having been doing this for so long. So, but I appreciate the correction. I'm always happy to have those. I get them a lot at home, so I'm pretty used to
For
it.
sure.
Um, when we think about Fred Rogers and his neighborhood, right? He saw his show as a neighborhood where everybody was welcome. And you lead the BBJ, which acts really as the town square for all of our city's leaders. How is it that you're able to ensure that your neighborhood remains a place of connection and support rather than simply a place of competition?
It's a great question, and the neighborhood connotation is super interesting because we really do see ourselves as a convener, and we have grown over many years to not be just. We're obviously a digital outlet, news outlet that operates 24/7. We do print, a weekly print publication still, because we believe in that as well. But it's morphed into doing events, programs. So in so many ways, we're a connector, as well as a place to get news and information. So I think that the way we see it is that through our news stories, straight news, what's happening in the world, stories that are more feature focused or event focused through our events and programs. We try to focus, sort of that old mantra, just the facts, right? No gotcha journalism. We try to we might report big stories that could be explosive, but we try to do them in a way that is really just gives you all of the facts and information you need to then make your judgment or your decision on what the story is, and not lean one way or the other. It really is the fact that we just try to stay true to our mission of as being a tool for the business community to help grow their career, simplify their professional lives, and keep them connected.
I think that's great. The idea that you're there not to influence how people think, but get them to think. And there's a big difference in that in terms of my mind, because obviously nowadays we see a lot of that gotcha news, and there's so many outlets that people can go to get it. And it's difficult when consuming news to determine what's real and what's not. And certainly my experience with you guys through just reading the articles, knowing what's going on in the business community, and certainly going to events, it is pretty clear that you see your role as saying, here's the information, here's what you can consume, you can choose how to consume and interpret it, and that's great. And I think it falls nicely in line with how Fred Rogers used his vehicle as a television show, in terms of he was very intentional about messaging. And you obviously talked a little bit this in terms of the intro, when I sort of thought, we talked about, as the publisher, you're not really driving it directly, but relying on the people in your newsroom. But obviously, you've got some influence on that. And so, I guess my question is, when you look at leaders in the Boston community, and there are tons of them, and there are some really wonderful, incredible people, how do you how do you how do you decide who to spotlight? Like, and you look for people in the business community, and the whole purpose of this podcast really is to highlight people who take leadership seriously, but lead with kindness. They lead with compassion. They lead in a way that allows the individuals who they work with to want to do better. And I see those leaders as helpers in the business world, much like Fred Rogers looked for helpers. And so, really, how do you guys decide who to spotlight?
Yeah, I think, the first thing is, as I said, that focus on our mission to be a critical tool for anyone doing business or wanting to do business, looking to grow a business here in Greater Boston and beyond, and staying focused on providing them the news, information, research, data, all kinds of things that they need to do business better. So while we're reporting breaking news, straight news, sort of this is happening here, transactional stuff, we also focus on those deeper stories, whether they're stories about how businesses got created, a certain person and their story, certain programs that happen that can help business grow. So we look at it in a variety, and then we also do lots of research in terms of, the top 25 lists and that kind of thing. And so it's really, in our newsroom and our team of reporters, work really hard to know on their individual beats. So who in life sciences, who in tech, who in healthcare are the key players. They really, our goal is to have our reporters, we want them talking to the leadership. We want them talking to the CEOs and finding out not only, okay, there's breaking news where, somebody bought someone, or we have a positive margin this year, but really more, how do they do what they do? So we do that in a variety of ways through straight news. But when you think about other events and programs, we do our Corporate Citizenship Awards program, which looks at corporate philanthropy and what companies are giving to nonprofits here in Massachusetts. So that's one way where we're really focusing on who those companies are, what they're giving, how much, and how they do it. We look at community partnerships between business and nonprofits, so we can model for other companies great partnerships and show how business and community can work together. So through a lot of it's a combination of, through some of the events and programs, best places to work, who are those companies that are really have great employee engagement and can, again, be good examples for many of us to inspire to be those great companies. So I think when you say, are we looking for sort of the helpers, we want to be unbiased. We're not going to just report, good news, but we're going to report our news in a responsible way. But so many of the things we do also help highlight the variety, scope, and really goodness, richness of the business community here in Greater Boston.
That's wonderful, and I do. I love some of the programs that you guys run, because the nonprofit world is important to me, as it is to many people, and the idea that you can highlight businesses, not just to highlight them to say, hey, look how great this business is, but to say, hey, you can do this too. You can lead with going forward and be compassionate and look at the community and give back, and I think that's a wonderful thing to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think quickly, one of the things that often when I talk to people more on a business side, and they're like, oh, write a story about me, we'll buy an ad or something, and I say the best way to communicate to our newsroom is not to say, I'm great, write about my company, is to talk to the newsroom about what that can help our reader, that can help our audience, whether it's about how you do what you do, or whether it's the expertise that you have.
And that's how you build a neighborhood. Right. You build a neighborhood of like-minded people who look beyond what's in it for me. We were talking earlier before we started the podcast about the CFO of the Year awards, right? And the Lifetime Achievement Award, which is near and dear to my heart because it's obviously named after Gorham Brigham, who that was his mantra. And I think the folks that you identify for that award every year follow that. What can I do for you? Not what's in it for me, but what can I do for you? And we need more of that nowadays, and I think the fact that you're highlighting it is wonderful. But you did note when you're talking about that you don't always report on the great things, right? And, we go through ebbs and flows in the marketplace, and Sometimes it's a great economy, sometimes it's not. And even when it's a great economy, there are still companies that suffer. And, Fred Rogers used to say that anything that's manageable, that's mentionable, is manageable. And in your line of work, because you have to report the facts and you have to report things that are happening, you do have to report on difficult topics like layoffs, failures, inequities. How are you able to communicate to your readers these difficult realities in a way that still helps the community manage them and then be able to move forward for a better solution?
I think it is really just good quality journalism and good quality reporting is like reporting the facts without bias, whether that story is a positive, here's the growth that this company is having, or it's about a lawsuit between two factions that is divisive and so on. But reporting it in a very fair and balanced way, making sure that you're getting both sides, making sure that you have multiple sources to talk about the issues, whatever they might be, making sure that you're getting all the perspectives and writing a story from all angles, not just from, sort of this person or that organization. So I think it is really just good balanced journalism will guide you, and that's kind of our North Star. That's what will lead the way, because we need to give a complete picture. All of us, it's like you learn from your failures, you learn from the bad stuff, or the challenges, you hope. And so by reporting what's happening out there in a fair and balanced way, you actually are, helping move the community forward, because people have the information that they need to make the decisions that they need to grow and do their business, or whatever else it is, that make a hard decision. As long as they have that information, then they can use that in whatever way works for them.
It's really old school journalism, right?
Yeah.
Just the facts. And I think it's important because when people see you as being consistent in how you're reporting around factual data and information that is unbiased, they're more apt to listen to it and take that information and hopefully use it again to find those better solutions. It's interesting because nowadays, the media is under attack and it's difficult for some folks to discern what's real and what's not. But when you have a consistency like you guys have through the years of doing that, I think that's a wonderful North Star for us as readers and in the community to be able to see. Well, it's from my experience, I'm certainly seeing it, and I think it's important because the community does rely on it more so now than ever, because there's so many different ways for us to consume information, and again to differentiate between what's real and what's not. When you know that there is that North Star out there and say, hey, the BBJ is consistently reporting things in an unbiased way, we're getting the information and it aligns with other things that we're seeing. It's hugely valuable. I mean, it's why I look at you as the truth teller, because that's that's your archetype. It's hugely important as coming from the media nowadays. Shifting a little bit towards value, right? Fred Rogers once said that what is essential is invisible to the eye. And in business, we're so obsessed with these metrics that we look at, whether they're lagging metrics, doesn't really matter, but we look at revenue, headcount, stock prices. How do you and your team find and report on invisible qualities of a company like culture when you talk about best places to work? So you talk about culture, you talk about kindness and the integrity by which a company runs its business. Where do you guys go to find that information and that data?
It's a great question. And actually, I'll give it a little bit of a different angle. In our business, you wrote the news, you reported the news, you had subscribers, and now so much of our business is digital. Whether it's on the advertising side, when you're selling, you're working with clients on their marketing and they're doing digital advertising and they want to see the metrics or their click-throughs, how many impressions are you delivering? And on the news side, so much of what newsrooms are faced with now is what are your metrics? How many, how far down did they read the story? How many page views did you get? How many unique visitors did you get? And that sometimes becomes the measure of quality. And I think that as a news organization, and those measures often translate into revenue. And obviously, we need revenue to, feed the beast, if you will. And that's really, as my role as publisher is working to run the business efficiently so that we are making the profit margins we want to, and then also ensuring, working with our advertising team, our events team, so that we're doing enough things to produce enough revenue, while those things hopefully are helping our clients. So that the newsroom can do their job in the best way that they know how. And so sometimes it's balancing, should we do this story because it's going to get lots of clicks and lots of page views, but is it really not a great story? Or do we do the story on healthcare that is so important but might not get so many page views? So it's kind of a constant balance in conversations we do have to have, that sometimes it's like, we need to do this story, this program, because this is important, might not get a lot of eyeballs, but ultimately we hope it will. And so you have to really balance what that is against the metrics. You have to balance the quality journalism against metrics. And doing good journalism and doing it the right way will get you those metrics, will get you those readers. But sometimes it is a little bit of a delicate balance. And in the world today, in the news world today, the lines are getting more and more blurred. And,
Yes.
sometimes there's opportunity for businesses to have content, what we call native content, on our website that's clearly marked that it's not our news, and that provides some really great information and insight for a reader as well. But we just have to make sure that we're not blurring the lines and one masquerading as the other. And so I think it's just, we just need to focus also on people, because every story, you need to have the numbers, you've got to have the facts and figures right. But if you tell the story through people, it's a much more effective story, and more people will read it because people want to read about people. And
Yes.
so if you're just focusing on percentages, revenue, numbers, which you have to, that's critical in a story. But then you tell the rest of it through the people, and how are they manifesting that revenue, those numbers, those stock prices, and those challenges.
Which, by the way, is kind of a unique take when you think about what it is. You look at the name of your paper, right? It's the Boston Business Journal, and people always just equate it with companies and entities, but the reality is that these businesses all have people behind them. So the fact that you're sort of piercing that corporate veil, so to speak, and digging down and looking at the individuals that are running these businesses, that are making them go, that are having an impact, is wonderful, because it does humanize your paper. And that's a great balance to be able to find. But certainly in terms of balancing, revenue versus storytelling, is got to be hard nowadays, because there are so many opportunities for companies to be able to advertise everywhere. It's no different than television, right? Growing
Right.
up, well, what do we have, like 5 TV stations? And we could always find something to watch.
Yeah.
Now there's hundreds of them, and half the time I'll look at my wife and go, what are we going to watch
There's
tonight?
nothing on.
There's nothing
Yeah.
on.
Right.
And so we've just consumed so differently, and I think the fact that you're able to find that balance is great. But being a journalist nowadays is very hard. There's always, people are always questioning what somebody's writing, and so and I know it's always been sort of high pressured, but I think it's more so today. And so when you look at your newsroom, how do you sort of create like a neighborhood of calm for your reporters and staff so they can do their best work without feeling burnt out, right? You bring sort of that, and listen, I've known you for quite some time, and you sat on one of my innovation awards committee for a couple of years, and I always felt like in a room full of business people, you always did sort of have that very calm way about you. But I'm sort of curious if that does translate when you're at work in a newsroom, when you have deadlines. How are you able to kind of manage that high stakes, high pressured, this has to be done because we have a deadline for publishing at 5 o'clock?
Well, we have, first of all, a great newsroom and a great team of editors and reporters on the news side who are really good at managing that. They communicate all the time. They meet frequently. And they try to do some fun things too, and give a lot of flexibility to their staff. So I would give that credit to, Doug Banks, my editor, Jess Allo, my managing editor. They both are different personalities and sort of rule with great calm, but in different ways, so that I think it creates a great balance. I think overall the organization, I'm kind of a high energy person, but then sometimes, more quiet. So sometimes I probably stir it all up because I'd say, we got to do this or this, But I think in general, it's about good communication. It's about passion for the product. And it's about trying to stay calm in the face of, any challenges, whether it's a news challenge or some crisis with an advertiser or some event crisis that's happening. There's so many aspects, like in any business, that you have, and to try to manage those. And I think, I'm just lucky to have a staff that really is excellent at what they do. They know how to do it and really know how to take a pause and manage a crisis well. And also just know how to say, okay, it's time to take a break. Let's have some fun. Let's order lunch. Let's do something as a team. So I think we try. Sometimes I think we probably could do more. I could probably do a better job of that sometimes. But really, I think it's the atmosphere of support. I think people do feel supported. We allow them as much flexibility as is possible. You have to do a job. You got to be excellent at what you do. And if you do that, we're going to help you live the best life that you can.
That's great advice. But again, I know Doug, and Doug is, has a great demeanor, is a super good guy. But ultimately, it still obviously still has to come from the top, right? And you still have to have somebody in the leadership role who either trusts their people
Yep.
to be able to lead the way they would like them, or acts like as their own North Star. Again, going back on that. And I feel like you guys clearly have a great newsroom because the product that you put out is always exceptional. But it has to be hard when you're in this sort of situation and have these deadlines to be able to kind of keep people managed and feel supported.
Right.
And that's, to me, a hallmark of great leadership, because without it, they react, right? And they feel stressed. And when people feel stressed, their work product is deficient. And so, and again, especially in that high pressured environment. So I think it's wonderful that you guys are able to do that without negatively impacting the product too.
But I think it is, sometimes grace under pressure, or just knowing that, what we do is important, but that most things can be fixed in terms of the business that we're in. If we do it right, if you're wrong, just admit you're wrong. And I just think the supporting your people is truly important, and making sure that if there's a problem or somebody calls and they have an issue or they don't like something that we wrote or something that we did, that your first instinct is to get the facts and make sure you're supporting your people instead of doing it the opposite. So I think that's really super important. I think if your team really recognizes your passion and commitment to the work that everyone in the organization does, then that helps all of them do the best work that they can.
That's wonderful. And it's great advice, and you guys are clearly doing a wonderful job with it. So I certainly appreciate
that.
it.
You're very kind to us.
As a reader, I appreciate that. And as a business person in Boston, I appreciate that. I alluded to, obviously, before, the fact that obviously there are some times that we have to report on difficult things just because of the way the business world is. And the media in general is kind of like that first stop, right? When they're the first ones that hear about something that's not good. And it becomes a difficult environment sometimes for us to have to report on those things. And, when Fred Rogers, one of the things he said that really always stuck with me growing up, and certainly as I've done more research into him as an adult, is that one of the greatest things we can do is help somebody know that they're loved and capable of loving, right? And the business world can be cynical, difficult, and in turn, the media is a big part of that. So we look at the Boston community or the community of your newspaper, and how are you able to sort of get past the cynicism that exists in so many areas of our lives on the business side, to sort of keep your heart open to the goodness in the neighborhood, the business neighborhood, your neighborhood at the Boston Business Journal?
Well, I like to think that we do that some of the time. I'm sure we don't do it. I know we don't do it all of the time. But I think if you think about, I mean, obviously individually, some of that comes from how you view the world and how you approach things and listening to people first and not being judgmental. And that's not always easy. We don't always accomplish it. I think that if I look at it from a BBJ perspective, I think that we do so many positive things through our news, the programs that we do, through our reporting, through the convenings that we do. So we're not saying this is good, this is bad. I think that it's more about the collection of things we do to bring people together. Is something that is a way to balance some of the good news, bad news. We're just a convener, or we're just a provider of we hope, essential information that then hopefully helps the community come together or decide when they should be apart or help them make a difficult decision based on the information that they've gotten through our data, through our news reporting, and maybe through some of our programs. I think also that when we look at some of our awards programs, those sometimes can offset, companies are struggling, or they're, having lawsuits, or having, they're shutting down, or they're laying people off. And those are facts, right? And so we want to provide the information about why is that happening. That's not always a terrible thing. Sometimes it's a business, remodeling itself, adjusting itself. So you just try to explain what that is, and then also look at the human side of it. But I feel like the biggest piece, sort of to keep ourselves open to what's good, is through the convenings. We do some small dinners where we have a group of business leaders around to talk about key issues. It could be the economy, it could be about health equity, it could be about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we do things that are, honor people who do, companies who have great workplaces. So I think through all of those things together, with our news and with the programs that we do and the people here, we can convene people so that they hopefully can find the joy and the positivity in
Right.
work that they do, and then how that can help the greater community.
It's clear to me that you guys do that. I wanted my listeners to hear that, because, again, where you guys sit in the ecosystem of the business community, you could be a blessing or a curse. And the fact that you not just report the news, but you highlight individuals who are contributing in some capacity works as a domino for other people to say, "Oh, geez, why am I not doing that? I should be doing that. I think that that's a wonderful thing." Or, "Geez, I want my business to be in the top 10 places to work. What can I be doing to make it better?" And that's a leadership thing, right? And you say, why are we not in the top 10 best places to work? What can I be doing differently within my company? And they may talk to a business owner who is, and learn from that. And then the nice thing is, and part of the genesis of this podcast was the idea that when you don't have a great work environment, when leadership is difficult, you take that home. And when you take that home, who do you take out your bad days on? You take it out on your family. And the domino effect of that is you start to model behavior that is not great, which your children might take to school the next day, or your spouse might take to work. And the fact that you guys, as one of the largest information sources for businesses, are highlighting companies that are leading well, helps offset that. And to me, that was, a big reason that I asked you to join the podcast, because you are leading an organization that isn't just being seen in a vacuum. It's not just the BBJ. It's what is the BBJ doing for the community at large? How is it impacting how other folks lead? How is it highlighting other companies? And to me, that is the best source of data that I see of how to lead. We want to lead by highlighting people that are doing it well, and I certainly appreciate it. I've been consuming, your paper for a very long time, longer than my 25-year-old has been born. So I
Well,
appreciate it. I certainly appreciate you coming on today, telling us your stories, providing information for my listeners to be able to maybe go to your paper and online or in print, learn more about Boston and learn more about what's happening in Boston that's positive in companies, so they can then take that to their own companies and be better leaders. So I appreciate it. So thank you.
yeah. Well, thank you for the time. We hope they come to our neighborhood, right? But thank you so much for the
Absolutely.
opportunity, and thanks for the work you're doing. This is a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Have a wonderful summer, and hopefully I'll see you at an event soon.
I hope so. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.